Apparently back in the old days they had a tax on windows. It's brought in because this is interesting. They brought it in because the people were so against the introduction of an income tax that they felt was too intrusive because it allowed the government to know how much money they earn as an individual, and they felt that was an imposition on their liberty to a prying state, which kind of shows how far we've come. But I thought the idea of a window tax is kind of interesting. People think that's where the phrase daylight robbery came from. I'm not sure, but anyway, but the idea of having to seems crazy to us. Like, oh yeah, the government could tax the windows, so people used to brick up their windows and then literally sort of like steal the daylight from them, and that seems really quite strange and almost like unbelievable to the modern mind. And yet here we are. Now that daylight tax apparently it lasted from 1696 to 1851 or something like that, and in the midst of that time, you've got the time of Oliver Twist. Charles Dickens is writing Oliver Twist, and so you've got people asking for more gruel, but like really, they could just as well have been going, "Please, sir, can I have some more daylight? Can I have some more daylight?" But and that's hilarious, right? Hilarious. But today we're in the position where we're like doing exactly the same thing. So we're saying like, "Please sir, can I have another hour outside? Can my masters let me out for another hour? My dog really needs a wee and I can't go out. I've done my walk already this morning. The neighbours might complain." And there we are. Here we are in a situation like that, in which generations to come, hopefully, if they think anything at all, if they're allowed to think anything, will think that that was insane, like we might think it's insane to have a tech tax on daylight. Man. Anyway, I've been looking at laws. Apparently, the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights says that in order for certain rights to be abrogated, there's a good word for you, I didn't know that word, abrogated, taken away, the emergency, I'm reading, the emergency must be actual, affect the whole population. Does it? The threat must be to the very existence of a nation. Is it? The declaration of emergency must also be a last resort. Was it? And a temporary measure. Hopefully the last one's true, the temporary measure. So we've introduced a lockdown on the idea that it affects the whole nation, the whole population, and it really only affects very few people, doesn't it? Like, let's look at the statistics properly. I'll put some in the box if you've not looked at them already. The threat must be to the very existence of a nation. Anyway, I won't go through them again. You get the idea. So we've had our right of freedom of assembly, and possibly even freedom of speech, because in order to have free speech, you have to be able to say it anywhere. But certainly freedom of assembly taken away from us. And on the basis of what? On the basis of what? None of those things. So it's, in its essence, to me, it seems like the lockdown is illegal. But good luck with that one, because there's many things that are illegal, like wars, torture, detention, things like this. But they happen all the time because our governments don't observe human rights, whether you like to admit that to yourself or not. But then here's the kicker. They say, oh yeah, but think of the harm you're doing to the health service if everybody gets ill. Yeah, think of it, right? So that's why they got empty hospitals, and that's why they're now saying they can cope with it, and we're still locked down. They said they needed respirators, and now the doctors are saying, oh no, them respirators, they kill people. And what was the other one? Oh yeah, we've got to flatten the curve. The curve's flattened, and we're still under lockdown. Questions are firing off in my little brain box here. The other thing they told us, oh yeah, you got to stay at home. And it was actually said explicitly by a police officer who was dealing with a journalist. The journalist was in the park in London, I think it was, and he saw an incident with a woman. He started filming because that's what journalists do. They want to record what's going on. And the police told him, go home, you're a killer. But, police you can get the odd bad egg, you can get several bad eggs, you can get like lots of order followers who kill millions of people. But saying you're a killer has not come from his head. It's been fed into his head. So it's not like, it's still inexcusable, but it's understandable if you live in a world full of nonsense, where nonsense gets fed into people. If a man's mind is full of nonsense, nonsense is going to come out. So when he says you're a killer, what he's trying to say is that you're going to be passing on infection to some vulnerable person. And apparently that makes you some kind of rodent or louse. You know, like you're the rat in the black plague. That's what you are. I'm not. You're very beautiful, and you know, we're all fine. But that's what they're trying to tell us. But like, so you're a rat in the black plague. But are we really? Or in fact, when are we not? Because we're always a link in a chain of infection. What about next flu seasons? If it's particularly bad, do we have to stay at home again in case I become a link in a chain that might eventually reach that poor vulnerable person who's going to die of the flu or the common cold or whatever infectious disease is going around all the time? That's a serious question because the principle there has been overridden all the time. But these people who dream up like taxes, like window taxes, like daylight robbery, like, oh yeah, you can't go for a second walk, or whatever the hell it is they're telling us at the moment. These people are like, I'm in the world of Lewis Carroll here. Apparently he used to float down the river just here, and he invented his Alice in Wonderland story. But people used to think, and in his story he says, the Queen says, oh, you've not had much practice at impossible things. Like, that's impossible. I've not. Some days I've even thought 12 impossible things before breakfast. But the difference between you and me and the impossible things and the Queen and the Alice in Wonderland story is that we didn't just think, we sometimes think impossible thoughts. We don't make them laws and put half the world under lockdown and say we're going to stick our needles into 7 billion people. That's the difference. That's the difference. What kind of world is that? Like, that's pretty impossible. That's an impossible thing you could dream that's like going on right now. And the thing with dreams is that sometimes they become reality, and you just gotta make, what have you got to do there? Maybe dream harder, maybe act faster, maybe think better, maybe make sure it's your dreams that come in reality and not some kind of megalomaniac window taxing, daylight robbing megalomaniac of the past or present who wants to increase the coffers for his domination of whatever principality he's in charge of. Yeah, that's probably enough, isn't it? I'm just talking stuff, but yeah, your contamination chain. Let's think about your contamination chain while we're here, just before I go. So, like, we're talking about, you know, they talked about us being a link in a contamination. I was just talking to say, like, we're always responsible for some kind of contamination down the line because we're agents of life. We're part of an infinite life force, and we're just some physical manifestation of that. And if there's virus or bacteria passing through, that's going to happen always. But also, in the same way, we're locked down because apparently they want to flatten their curves and whatever else they want to do. But does it actually work? Does it work? It's because when you're locked down, where are you getting your food from? Who's touched the food? Who's handled it? When you go to the supermarket and there's a good number of you in there, or queuing up, or handling somebody's packed that food, someone's stacked that shelf, someone's touched that card before you. The delivery man who brings you your delivery, he's handled the food. Someone cooked it. Someone put it in those plastic boxes or whatever it is. Wrapped up your burrito, whatever it is. And there's medical people saying this now that you can't break a chain of infection. It's going to get you eventually, sooner or later. So the best thing you can do is stay well. And how do you stay well, my people? You're not mine. It doesn't matter. I don't know where that came from. How do we stay well? We stay well by nourishing ourselves with sunlight, which is vitamin D, with social interaction. It keeps your spirits up, and well-being makes you be well. You interact with people, and that's the way it goes. What else? Going outside. Oh yeah, your immune system. If you go outside, then your immune system's getting practice. You're touching, like I'm sitting amongst all the soil and the mud here, and there's stuff and there's different animals poo around, whatever. But yeah, so your immune system gets practice. It gets practice, and when you stop going in and you isolate yourself, your immune system will dip because it's not getting recharged by the handling of things. So when we do get let out of lockdown, all those people who've been very isolated will find that their immune systems are weak, and they will get a little bit more ill more quickly. So there'll be a spike in all kinds of ailments, including if there is this COVID-19 problem. That will be part of that spike, and then my fear is that maybe they'll say, oh yeah, you've got to go back indoors again because the illness is spiking, this virus is spiking. They told us it was an 18-month plan at the beginning, so watch out for that. Okay, take care. Hope you have enough toilet paper. See you later.